And welcome back. This half of our program, we have Lynn Keefe with us here from General Services. Good morning.
Good morning.
And aren't you happy that this is not this date in 2016?
We are thrilled. That was one of my topics today, was to talk about the fact that it's winter, but only by the calendar, certainly not by the weather.
None of that frozen wet stuff on the ground this year.
No.
Yes.
Certainly interesting weather this year, but we still, because it is that time of year, and probably sooner or later we're going to have to face winter. So a few reminders I thought I might share today.
That's a good idea.
So as when we go into any new season, there are always some topics, and for winter we want to talk about preparedness. And we start with personal preparedness, that if you're going to go out in the weather, as with any weather, you want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately. And with winter usually comes slippery footing, so make sure that you're wearing appropriate footwear with good traction, and that you're dressed appropriately if you really need to go out. But then also for those folks who drive, to make sure that your vehicle is also prepared. And that means that your tires are in good shape. You know, I grew up in the Midwest, so we didn't go anywhere without sand in the trunk and blankets.
Lynn and I both went to Ohio State, so we have kind of been there and done that in terms of being cold.
That's right. Even though my kids roll their eyes when I say you should take a coat, we want to make sure that if you are going out, not only are you personally prepared, but that your vehicle is in shape to do so. And that, you know, when the weather is bad, if you don't need to go out, don't. Sometimes I tell residents that even though the roads here at Green Spring look great, it's not like that outside of
And
Green
part
Spring.
of your vehicle is being prepared. Do not back out of your parking space until all of your windshields and glass are clear, completely clear.
That's right. That's right. I often see folks on my daily commute that maybe have only scraped those little eye holes, and that's just not good enough. You want to make sure you have good vision and that you've defrosted and gone through all of that. Along with that, some expectations. We have about 250 residents who signed up for our snow clearing subscription service, and that's available to anybody who has reserved parking. They sign up at the beginning of the season, and anytime there's a measurable snowfall, their vehicle will automatically be cleared, or the space that they park in. For other folks, they can call on an as-need basis for each event. But we also want to make sure that folks understand what are the priorities. So it works very well if the snow comes down in a short period of time and then we go clear it and we move on. But that's usually not how it happens. It snows and it starts and it stops and it accumulates. So during that time, our priorities are always the circles in front of each of the community buildings, the roadways so that fire EMS can get on and off campus for emergencies. So those are our priorities. And then once the snow stops falling, we move from there and we move to the parking lots and then to the vehicles. So plan accordingly. Part of your preparedness is you know, to take a look at how long do you think it might realistically take to get your vehicle out if you have appointments, and maybe you need to reschedule.
So even if we're paying you to clear the space behind our vehicles, it's not going to be done immediately.
That's correct. We say on the sign up that we have up to 48 hours from when the snow stops falling. And even then, you know, last year we had such a significant historical fall that even that was a challenge. But we have to clear spaces for fire EMS first and work, and the walkways, and we work appropriately. But amazingly, they still made pretty good time last year.
And this is only for those with reserved parking spaces?
The subscription service, right. Yes. But others who don't have reserved space can still call, you know, for any snow event and just give the information. They give their vehicle information and where they're parked.
Okay.
And that's the only reason they can't sign up, because they're not always in the same space.
Sure.
So we want to be prepared for winter, and maybe then we will have a very mild winter.
Sounds good.
But in the meantime, we still have a few other things going on. So the window project continues. And for folks who have any friends in Neighborhood 1, I encourage you to talk with them to see how it's going. They've really gelled, if you will, the team, the project management, and the residents as to what to expect. So they are finishing box bays in Madison Green. They went in and did all of the windows, and then the box bays were separate, so they're back finishing those, and then they'll return to Walden Court where they've started. And that will take some time, but the process is moving along. I think residents are probably talking over dinner about what to expect. The team goes in and assesses what needs to be moved, removing window coverings, and they do all of that. Then a team will go in to install, and then another team will come back to do touch-up and move things back for the residents.
I've heard nothing but good reports.
And we hope that that continues. It's a process, you know, because these are all spaces where folks live. There's a lot more than just going in and taking out the window and putting in the new one. At the same time, we're also doing doors in Neighborhood 1, and those have actually been completed. So that, if folks have noticed, those...
We have a new door?
Yes, and that process hopefully was very smooth for you. They are continuing to do, you know, touch-ups here and there, and the one thing that I think was a little confusing, folks said, well, Lynn, I thought you said that those doors were going to match the frames. They will, as soon as those hallways are redone. So the door color will match when the hallway life cycle is done.
When the frame is done.
But they are nice, light and bright. And
they make an amazing difference in the amount of light.
They
both
do.
Both inside and outside.
Yes, you can really understand how light and paint color choice lend itself to the environment.
That was another very smooth process.
And I'm so glad to hear that. That's part of our process in selecting vendors, because they are going to be working in your home.
Right.
So two other projects that are going on. One that's probably invisible to most residents, but we're beginning the work on combining two smaller units into one larger unit. We have a couple of those on campus, and as you can imagine, that's quite a process. So we're beginning that, and we'll probably have some photos, some before and afters to share as the project moves along. Folks like to see that.
See how it works.
Yes. And then one that's near and dear to many folks is the elevator. And folks have said, you know, that project got identified a couple years ago.
It's the elevator here in Village Square.
The second elevator, yes. And so folks are correct. It was identified, and with some leadership change came some humps, if you will, in the process. But we are on track. It will be done this year, and the contract is out. So as we have a timeline, I'm not going to assess dates at this point, but as we get closer to that, we'll share those dates. But please know that it is in process.
Do we know where it's going to be located?
It is going to be near the screened-in porch, just outside of Woodland Skies.
Okay.
So we call that, you know, scabbing it out on the outside of the building. Originally, we had talked about using the space next to the existing. This actually will work better for flow of people. That tends to be a little bit of a congested area right there where the existing is. But it is in process, and so look for more information and probably some visuals to help people understand what that will look like. So one of the things, you know, as I work with the Resident General Services Committee that often comes up, and I thought I'd take the opportunity to share. Folks say, well, you know, how do I get something done? And some things are suggestions, and so we do have comment cards. There are boxes at each clubhouse, and that's a great, you know, if you have an idea or an observation, sometimes they're kudos for staff. That's a great place to place your information. But if you say you're in one of the common spaces and it's too warm or it's too cold, don't write a comment card. That's let the front desk know, and they can radio that out. Some things we can do remotely, and that'll be taken care of immediately. Then there's also work orders, and folks say, well, you know, I need something done in my apartment. And so you can always call General Services to create a work order. Some things are an immediate, you know, certainly if it's heating or cooling, we want to get somebody out there. And I think that one is important. Sometimes on the weekends, we have folks here on the weekends, but sometimes it's after hours. That's still a call to the front desk, and those are an immediate response. You know, certainly water intrusion.
And do we call the front desk?
You just call the front desk, and they will radio to maintenance or to our on-call staff. So make sure that folks are questioning. You can always call the front desk after hours. That's, you know, your best place.
Don't think that just because someone isn't in the General Services office that there's not someone available to help you.
That's correct.
Call your front desk.
Correct. Now, if, you know, it's, oh, I need somebody to hang a picture, that will wait to normal business hours. But there
Actually, I learned this weekend that if I call the General Services number on a weekend, it is patched right through to the front desk automatically.
Yes, and you know, sometimes it is for work orders. Some are immediate, some are scheduled, but always ask.
Yes.
And most folks know our number. That's probably one of the first numbers they learn.
Good. We have 1 minute.
1 minute. Well, I would end then with a safety note.
Okay.
Along with our winter preparation, you know, it's such a busy campus, and as we have more and more things going on, that means more people. So I would remind everyone of the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yes.
And also, even if we're walking, everybody's in a hurry, we need to just proceed with caution.
Excellent. Excellent advice. And I learned, you know, my car does have brakes. A lot of people say their cars won't go 15 miles an hour. They will.
They will. You just use that brake.
Yes, right.
Yes.
It does work. Lynn, thank you for joining us today, and thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Okay. And we have a few announcements today before we leave you. Our feature program